The studio lights felt warmer than Emma Rodriguez had imagined. Sitting in the green room before the taping of Family Feud, she smoothed down her burgundy blouse for the 100th time, her fingers trembling slightly. Her interpreter, Marcus, sat beside her, his presence a familiar comfort in this whirlwind of anxiety and excitement. "You're going to be amazing," Marcus signed, his movements fluid and reassuring. Emma smiled, but her stomach churned with nervous energy. At 29, she had taught American Sign Language to deaf and hard-of-hearing students for 7 years. She had faced rowdy classrooms, skeptical administrators, and budget cuts that threatened to eliminate her program every single year. But this was different. This was national television, bright lights, and Steve Harvey, the man whose mustache had become as iconic as his quick wit and infectious laugh. The production assistant, a young woman with a clipboard and a headset, appeared in the doorway. She spoke while also signing, a courtesy the production team had arranged. 5 minutes, Rodriguez family. 5 minutes. Emma's family gathered around her. Her father, Miguel, wrapped his weathered hands around hers. He had worked double shifts at the factory for 30 years to put Emma and her 3 siblings through school. Her mother, Rosa, kissed her forehead and sighed, "No matter what happens today, we're proud of you." Her younger brother, Daniel, and her sister, Sophia, gave her encouraging thumbs up. They had practiced for weeks, running through potential survey questions at the dinner table, debating answers, and laughing until their sides hurt. Emma had worried about how the show would accommodate her deafness, but the producers had been remarkably accommodating, ensuring Marcus would be at her side throughout the taping. The Rodriguez family filed onto the stage, and Emma's heart nearly stopped. The set was somehow bigger and brighter than it appeared on television. The audience applauded, and though Emma couldn't hear the sound, she could feel the vibrations through the floor, could see the enthusiasm on their faces. And there he was, Steve Harvey, in an impeccably tailored navy suit, his signature mustache perfectly groomed, his smile genuine and wide. Steve approached the families, microphone in hand, ready to do what he did best, make everyone feel like they were old friends gathering for a game night. He shook hands with the opposing family, the Johnsons, a boisterous group from Tennessee who had their own share of interesting stories. When Steve reached Emma, he didn't miss a beat. He had been briefed about her deafness, but he didn't treat her differently. He shook her hand firmly, looked her directly in the eyes, and spoke clearly so she could read his lips while Marcus interpreted. "Emma Rodriguez, welcome to Family Feud. I hear you're a teacher?" Marcus's hands moved swiftly, and Emma nodded, signing her response. "I teach ASL to deaf and hard-of-hearing students in Chicago." Steve's eyebrows rose, genuine interest crossing his face. "That's beautiful work. That's really beautiful work." He turned to the audience. "We've got a teacher here, folks. Someone making a real difference." The audience applauded, and Steve waited for them to quiet down before continuing. "Now, I've been doing this show a long time, and I've learned something important. Teachers either know everything or they think they do." He paused for comedic effect, his eyes twinkling. "Which one are you?" Emma laughed, her signing animated as Marcus translated. "I know everything about verbs and sign language. Everything else, I'm still learning." Steve threw his head back and laughed, that genuine, room-filling laugh that had made him beloved by millions. "I like her already." He turned to the audience again. "She's honest. That's refreshing." The game began with its trademark energy. Steve read the first question with his usual flair. "We asked 100 people. Name something people do when they're nervous." Miguel, Emma's father, was first to the buzzer. "Bite their nails. Bite their nails." Steve repeated, turning to the board. The number 1 answer flipped over. Miguel pumped his fist as his family cheered. The Rodriguez family chose to play, and one by one, they gave their answers. Rosa said people pace when nervous. Sophia suggested fidgeting. Daniel offered sweating. When it came to Emma's turn, Steve positioned himself so she could see both him and Marcus clearly. He didn't rush her, didn't make a spectacle of the accommodation. He simply waited, as he would for any contestant. Emma signed her answer, and Marcus voiced it. "Talk really fast." Steve's face lit up. "Now that's interesting. Talk really fast. He looked at the board expectantly. The answer flipped over, number 4. There it is. Good answer. The rounds continued, and Emma found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the game. Steve's presence was commanding yet comfortable. He had a way of making even wrong answers funny, without making contestants feel stupid. When Daniel confidently answered, "Name something you find in a bathroom with a kitchen sink," Steve's reaction was priceless. He stared at Daniel for a long moment, his expression a masterpiece of disbelief and amusement. "A kitchen sink," Steve repeated slowly, emphasizing each word. "In a bathroom." He looked at the camera, then at the audience. Did y'all hear what he said? The audience roared with laughter. Steve walked away from the podium, his hand on his forehead in mock despair, before returning to Daniel. "Son, I need you to think about what you just said. Really think about it." Daniel's face turned red as realization dawned. The family laughed along with the audience, and even Emma, watching Steve's exaggerated reactions, couldn't stop giggling. Marcus was laughing so hard his signing became erratic. Steve leaned in, his voice gentle despite the humor. "It's okay, man. We've all been there. I once forgot my own anniversary. My wife still reminds me." He paused. Every single day, the game progressed through several rounds, with both families trading the lead. The Rodriguez family's chemistry was evident. They supported each other through wrong answers, celebrated correct ones, and most importantly, they were having fun. Steve noticed this and commented on it more than once. "I love this family," he said during a break in the action. "Look at how they are with each other. Win or lose, they're enjoying every moment. That's what it's supposed to be about." He pointed at them appreciatively. "That's family right there." By the time they reached the final round, the score was close, but the Rodriguez family had a slight edge. They had accumulated enough points to win the main game. But now came the real challenge: fast money. Emma volunteered immediately, her hand shooting up before anyone else could react. Steve raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Fast money is pressure, baby. 200 points and however many questions we can fit in the time limit." Emma nodded firmly, signing her determination. Marcus translated, "I want to try. My students always tell me I should take more risks. This is me taking a risk." Steve's expression softened. For a moment, the game show host persona slipped, and something genuinely touched appeared in his eyes. "All right then. Your father's going backstage with some headphones. Well, he'll be backstage while you play. Then he comes back, and y'all need to get to 200 points combined to win the money. You ready?" Emma nodded, her jaw set with determination. Miguel gave her shoulder a squeeze before being led backstage. The stage crew positioned Emma at the fast money podium, Marcus standing slightly to the side, ready to interpret. Steve stood beside her, and she could feel the energy shift. This was the moment. $25,000 for her family, for her school, for the program that was perpetually on the verge of being cut. She thought of her students. Little Maria, who had finally signed her first full sentence last month. David, who had been told he would never learn to communicate effectively, but was now reading at grade level. Jasmine, who wanted to be a teacher just like Emma. "You got this," Steve said, making sure she could see his lips. "Just answer fast. Don't overthink it. There's no wrong answers in fast money." "Well, there are wrong answers, but you know what I mean." He grinned. "Ready?" Emma took a deep breath and nodded. 20 seconds on the clock, Steve announced. "Name a place where people whisper." Emma's hands flew immediately. "Library." "Library. Name something that's hard to open." "Jar." "Good. Name a reason you might skip breakfast." "Running late." "Name something people do in front of a mirror." "Brush teeth." "Name an animal that's black and white." "Panda." Steve stepped back as the buzzer sounded. "All right, let's see what you got." He walked to the board, building the suspense as only he could. "Name a place where people whisper." "You said library." The board revealed 19 people had said library. Emma felt her heart sink slightly. Not a bad answer, but not great. Steve continued through her answers. Jar got 23 points. Running late for breakfast earned 32. Brushing teeth in front of a mirror got 41 points. But when they got to her final answer, panda for black and white animals, the board showed only 3 points. Steve shook his head sympathetically. Panda. Free people. He looked at Emma. I gotta tell you, I wouldn't have thought panda either. I'm thinking zebra. I'm thinking skunk. I'm thinking penguins, but panda? He smiled. That's why this game is hard. The total appeared, 118 points. Emma needed her father to get 82 more points. It was possible, but it would require good answers. Miguel returned to the stage, and the process repeated. Steve explained the format, ensuring Miguel understood he couldn't duplicate Emma's answers. When they were ready, Steve began. 20 seconds. Name a place where people whisper. Church. Miguel answered immediately. Church. Good answer. Name something that's hard to open. A pickle jar. Pickle jar. That's specific. Steve was nodding. Name a reason you might skip breakfast. Not hungry. Not hungry. Name something people do in front of a mirror. Put on makeup. Name an animal that's black and white. Zebra. The buzzer sounded, and Steve's eyes widened. Okay. Miguel came to play. Let's see what we got. They started with church for places people whisper. The board flipped over, 39 points. Miguel and Emma high-fived. Steve was nodding enthusiastically. That's what I'm talking about. Church got 39. Pickle jar for things hard to open, 17 points. But it didn't duplicate Emma's more general jar answer, so it counted. The family was climbing. Not hungry for skipping breakfast earned 8 points. Putting on makeup got 15. Here we go, Steve said, the dramatic tension building. We're at 197 points. You need 3 more points. 3. And Miguel said, zebra for black and white animals. The audience held their collective breath. Emma gripped her mother's hand. Steve turned to the board with theatrical slowness. The board revealed 47 people had said zebra. The Rodriguez family erupted. Emma jumped up and down, tears streaming down her face as her family engulfed her in hugs. Steve was grinning from ear to ear, clapping along with the audience. 244 points. That's what I'm talking about. That's how you do it. As the celebration continued, a production assistant approached Steve with a note. Emma saw him read it, saw his expression change from celebration to something deeper, something emotional. He nodded to the assistant, then gestured for the family to settle down. Hold on, Steve said, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone pause. Before we finish up here, I got something to share with y'all. He looked directly at Emma. Emma, can you come here for a second? Emma approached, confused but curious. Marcus moved with her, ready to interpret. Steve's demeanor had shifted entirely. The game show host had stepped aside, and in his place was simply a man deeply moved by something. Emma, you mentioned your students earlier. The ones you teach ASL to in Chicago. He paused, collecting himself. While you were playing today, my producers received something special. A large screen descended behind them, and Steve gestured to it. Students from your school, and actually from all over the country, deaf and hard-of-hearing students who heard you were going to be on the show, they sent in video messages. They wanted you to know what you mean to them. The screen lit up, and Emma's hand flew to her mouth. There was Maria, her tiny hands forming signs with careful precision. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for teaching me I can do anything. David appeared next. You never gave up on me. Now I'll never give up on myself. One by one, her current and former students appeared on the screen, signing messages of love, gratitude, and encouragement. Students she taught years ago, now in high school. Students from other states who had heard her speak at conferences. A montage of young faces, all sharing one common message. Emma Rodriguez had changed their lives. Emma was sobbing now, her professional composure completely shattered. Her family surrounded her, crying themselves. The audience was audibly emotional, and even the camera operators were wiping their eyes. When the video ended, Steve took a deep breath. There's more, he said softly. He held up a card that had been given to him. Thanks to some very generous people who contacted us when they heard about you being on the show, we've established something called the Emma Rodriguez Scholarship Fund for Deaf Students. Starting today, and continuing every year, this fund will provide full educational scholarships to deaf and hard-of-hearing students pursuing degrees in education. Emma's knees nearly gave out. Her father caught her, holding her steady. She looked at Steve through her tears, trying to comprehend what she was hearing. Steve wasn't finished. He shifted his stance, and something changed in his body language. His hands came up, and he began to move them carefully, deliberately. Emma's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. Steve Harvey was signing. His movements were careful, practiced, clearly the work of someone who had spent significant time learning. Emma, his hand spelled out her name, then continued. You teach students that their differences don't define their limitations. You show them that communication comes in many forms, and that their voices, whether spoken or signed, matter. The audience had gone completely silent, transfixed. Steve continued signing, his face concentrated but emotional. Because of your dedication, because of your belief in your students, this scholarship will help ensure that future generations of deaf students have access to education and opportunity. This is your legacy, Emma Rodriguez. He paused, then signed the final words. Thank you for inspiring us all. Emma launched herself forward, hugging Steve tightly. He hugged her back, and there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. When they finally separated, Steve was wiping his own eyes, laughing at himself. Man, y'all got me crying on my own show. My makeup team is gonna kill me. The audience laughed through their tears, and Steve turned to the cameras, addressing viewers directly. You know, we do a lot of shows. We laugh, we have fun, we give away money. But every once in a while, we get reminded of what's really important. He gestured to Emma and her family. This woman right here, she's not just playing a game. She's living a purpose. And when you meet someone like that, someone who pours their heart into making other people's lives better, well, he trailed off, shaking his head. That's when you realize why we do what we do. He looked back at Emma. I started learning sign language 3 weeks ago when I found out you were coming on the show. I wanted to surprise you, and honestly, I wanted to challenge myself, to step into your world, even just a little bit. He smiled. I have a long way to go, but your students, they've been sending me videos, teaching me. They're already better teachers than I am a student. Emma signed, and Marcus translated through his own tears. You have no idea what this means. Not just the money, though that's incredible, but you, Steve Harvey, taking the time to learn our language, to value it enough to study it. You're showing millions of people watching right now that deaf culture matters, that we matter. You're using your platform to say that all forms of communication are valuable. Steve nodded, then signed again, a simple phrase, but one that carried enormous weight. You are heard. The show concluded with the family celebrating, but the moment lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Steve stayed on stage, practicing more signs with Emma, asking questions about deaf culture, genuinely engaged in learning more. The producers had to eventually remind him he had another taping scheduled. As Emma and her family prepared to leave, Steve pulled her aside one more time. He spoke while signing the key words, his efforts still choppy but sincere. I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll keep teaching, keep inspiring those kids. Because what you do, that's the real deal. That's changing the world, one student at a time. Emma signed her response slowly, making sure he could understand. I promise. And thank you for seeing us. Really seeing us. Always, Steve signed back, one of the first words he had learned. 3 months later, Emma received a letter at her school. The scholarship fund had received an overwhelming response, with donations pouring in from across the country. 15 students would receive full scholarships in the first year alone. The letter was signed by Steve Harvey himself, with a handwritten note at the bottom. Keep changing the world. I'm still practicing my signing. Your students are tough teachers. Steve. Emma laughed, tears welling up again. Though these days, they were always tears of joy. She pinned the letter to her bulletin board, right next to photos of her students and a screenshot from the show of Steve signing to her. Every time a student walked into her classroom feeling discouraged, feeling like the world wasn't built for them, she pointed to that image. See that man? She would sign. He's one of the most famous people in America. He could have done anything with his time. But he chose to learn our language. He chose to honor our culture. If Steve Harvey believes in you, believes in us, then you better believe in yourself. The scholarship fund grew. and so did awareness. Other shows reached out to Emma, wanting to feature her story. She appeared on morning talk shows, news programs, and educational broadcasts. But she always came back to that moment on Family Feud, to Steve Harvey carefully forming signs with his hands, to the message it sent, that everyone deserves to be heard, in whatever language they speak. Years later, when Emma's school expanded its program thanks to increased funding and support, they named the new building the Harvey Rodriguez Center for Deaf Education. At the dedication ceremony, Steve attended, and his signing had improved dramatically. He addressed the crowd in both spoken English and ASL, his hands moving with increasing confidence. When I met Emma Rodriguez, he signed and spoke, I learned something important. True communication isn't just about words or sounds. It's about seeing people, really seeing them. It's about understanding that different doesn't mean less than. It's about recognizing that every person has value, every voice matters. He paused, looking at the students gathered for the ceremony, their eager faces watching his hands as intently as others might watch his mouth. These students, all of you, you're going to change the world. And people like Emma, they're making sure you have every tool, every opportunity, every chance to do exactly that. The ceremony concluded with the students performing a signed choir piece, their hands moving in synchronized beauty, creating art from silence. Emma stood beside Steve, and for a moment, they simply watched together. You know what I learned from all this? Steve signed, his movements now fluid and natural after years of practice. What? Emma signed back. That the loudest messages sometimes come without sound. That the most powerful voices can come from silence. And that Family Feud isn't just about winning money. It's about moments like this. Moments that matter. Emma smiled, signing one final message. Thank you for listening. Steve signed back. Thank you for teaching me how. The scholarship fund continued to grow, eventually expanding beyond deaf students to support all students with disabilities pursuing education degrees. Emma's story became a case study in teacher education programs across the country, an example of dedication, passion, and the ripple effect one person can create. But for Emma, the real reward came every day in her classroom, when a student's eyes lit up with understanding, when a child signed their first complete thought, when someone who had been told they couldn't found out they absolutely could. Those moments, she often thought, were worth more than any prize money, any scholarship fund, any fame. Though she had to admit, as she rewatched the episode of Family Feud for the 100th time with her students, seeing Steve Harvey's face scrunched up in concentration as he formed his first signs, seeing the pure joy when he got it right, that was pretty special too. The episode became one of the most watched in Family Feud history, shared millions of times across social media, translated into multiple languages, and used in countless classrooms as an example of empathy, inclusion, and the power of taking time to understand someone else's world. It sparked a nationwide conversation about deaf education, accessibility, and the importance of preserving and honoring sign language as a vital form of communication. For Steve Harvey, it became one of his proudest moments in a career full of highlights. He often spoke about Emma in interviews, about how meeting her had changed his perspective, challenged him to grow, and reminded him that his platform could do more than just entertain. It could educate, inspire, and unite. And for the Rodriguez family, it became the story they told at every gathering, the moment that proved what they had always known, that when you approach life with love, determination, and an open heart, the whole world opens up in ways you never imagined possible. The sound of victory, Emma realized, wasn't always audible. Sometimes it was in the movement of hands, the expression on a face, the tears of joy streaming down cheeks. Sometimes it was in the silence between words, in the space where understanding bloomed. And sometimes, just sometimes, it came in the form of Steve Harvey, mustache perfectly groomed, suit impeccably tailored, learning to speak without words. Learning that the most important conversations happen not with our voices, but with our hearts.